I'd like to introduce my guest today as someone that I've known for a very long time, at least his work. I've only connected with him properly lately because it's very important. His work is absolutely key to understanding why the world is in the total mess it's in. And Lark has been a researcher into communitarianism for a very, very long time. And most people don't understand what that word means or is or anything. And it's really important we do understand, because it is a buzzword. It's not a buzzword, but everything underneath it are buzzwords that are implementing the tyranny that we're under now. So, Lark, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Appreciate being here.
It's really, really good to have you here. Now, I would like today for people to end up with a clear understanding of what this word communitarianism means and why it's underused or known, and what the buzzwords are that are actually supporting it, the structure that's supporting all of this, because it is a word that people don't speak about it, because if they did know about it, they'd be doing something about it. So I would like you, if you can, to understand this very strange ism called communitarianism, if you can, just how to understand what it is and how we understand it more. Thank you.
Well, very good. I'll give it a stab. In my view, communitarianism is the most important word in the English language that the average person is completely unaware of. They consider that it must not exist because they never hear this word at the water cooler, at the church pew. They never hear it at the pub or the cafe. They don't see it in print. The sock puppets at the BBC, you're never going to hear this word emanate from their mouths. But the reason of its import lies in the fact that there is such a thing as EU-style communitarian law. And that is the ding, ding, ding moment. At least it was for me. This is a law that was 80 years in the making. It is the law which has superimposed itself, been overlaid upon the nation states' laws of Europe, Italy, Germany, Norway, even the Brexit folks there in the UK, France, Greece, etc., etc. And this is the law, the legal underpinning for global governance in a hyper-connected world today. Now,
absolutely,
you can say that in 1,000 different ways, and you can say it as simplistic as if you like. But communitarianism is a scientific dictatorship of the global to local community. And you have to ask yourself, well, whatever do you mean by community? And it's one of the primary buzzwords that's employed, that communitarians have hijacked it. And we're in a situation today where the people do not even know what it is they're fighting against. Because you have to be quite concise. If you're going to engage the enemy, then you need to know that in this world today, that enemy has a name, and the enemy has a law which underpins it. And so there's the facts on the ground as they exist. I have worked mightily. Others before me have tried to keep this word alive. We need to keep it top of mind, because we can identify all kinds of encroachments, all kinds of outrages on a daily basis, because they are never ending. But imagine yourself as a pugilist in a boxing ring. You are being assaulted at every turn, and all you can do is put up a defense. And unless you decide that you can come back with an offense, that you're going to continue to be assaulted until at such a point you're so punch drunk that you cannot even function. And this is what we are being faced with today, an enemy which is relentless. They assault us continuously And we have no choice but to constantly defend. Please continue. Go
Well,
ahead.
look, I just I realised that there was something going on, and I was working at that time with people in the UK that understood, people like Mark Windows, who understood communitarianism, and I was talking about Agenda 21, and we got together with Piers Corbyn, and we went on, did a tour once to try and educate the whole of the UK, and we were planting seeds, and people that we managed to get them to understand are now sort of really on it, which is brilliant. But I noticed in my own locality, the International Committee of Environmental and Local Initiatives, ICLEI, was implemented after the Earth Summit in every single town council in the UK. And that was all part of the EU communitarian law agenda. So, and ICLEI was in the United States. It was everything. And Rosa Corey, who I did speak to quite a lot, sadly she's passed, but we used to speak about it. She understood that was one of the ways of implementing communitarianism. It was bringing the global agenda from global to local, and this is what it is, isn't it? Or correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you state that well.
Okay.
The other thing about communitarianism is you can look at the encyclopedia definitions. Certainly, you should do that, but realize that it's the camel's nose under the tent. Okay, because the idea of balancing an individual's rights with those of the community at large is quite nebulous, abstruse language that we need to take note of. And the fact of the matter is, in a communitarian system, nobody has rights. And when nobody has rights unaccompanied by duties and responsibilities, therein lies the key to understanding this whole phenomenon, because it's a tyranny of language, okay, in which the people that have jumped on the bandwagon of this gestalt have learned to wield the language that will enable them to advance their careers. And so they see no harm in this, okay? But when a man does not have rights to the ownership of his own mind, his own body, personal autonomy, exercise of free will, the ability to locomote him or herself from point A to point B on their own volition, beneath their own power, this is the end of independence of any kind. Independence of thought, mind, action. And this is the beginning of technological slavery. And technological slavery is easily understood as meaning, number one, you have to understand what's slavery, number one, and what is technology, number two. But a technology is language, just like it is money. And it's a tool we understand. It can be wielded for good or for ill. But the world we live in today has forced us to accept that we're going to be ruled by machines and this military-grade infrastructure. And this is an outrage in and of itself that has got to be combated.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lark. And really well said. Now, if you could explain, because I understand it, but I don't, maybe our viewers don't understand where this comes from, this communitarian word, because actually it is a fusion, isn't it, of capitalism, or what they call Tony Blair called it the third way. So did Nikki Rapana. But obviously Tony Blair had a different way of explaining it. And we'll talk about Nikki Rapana later, but she wrote the Anti-Communitarian Manifesto in, I don't know what year it was. Was it 2020? I can't remember.
2003
but
originally.
Anyway, 2003 originally, and then she I think she republished it in 2020, sadly, just before she passed away.
Well, 2012.
Now,
2012 it was republished.
2012.
Revised.
Yeah. So I just got this. Just would like you to explain the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. this it's almost like problem reaction solution. It's a Hegelian dialect, isn't it? That communitarian is that very thing. It's a fusion of communism, capitalism, and what we now know as stakeholder capitalism, which is communitarianism. So if you could just explain that a little more.
Well, the word itself comes from the French. The French communitarianism as well as the French communism were both introduced to Engels by John Goodwin Barmby around 1841. This is in advance of the Communist Manifesto, published in 1848. And he was an Englishman. He founded something called the Communitarian Church for a time. He was a member of the British Chartist movement. But then it resurrected itself with the publication of a book called A Theory of Justice by John Rawls in 1971. And then it became a discussion within academia, and quite a hot discussion. But indeed, it is a rebranding of capitalism and communism. So if you read anything related to what's known as Marxist literature, like at Marxist.org or Marxism-Leninism Today, that's m-l-today.com, for example, and you're steeped in all that, well, they're saying, well, we've got to get rid of capitalism. It's the boogeyman. And we've got to get rid of all the religions. And, all you have to do is just look at the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. 1963, recorded in the U.S. Congressional Record, is 45 goals of communism. But we have to remember that Marx's magnum opus was called The Capital, Das Kapital, which was written later. What we have to recognize is that with this rebranding of capitalism and communism, they don't adhere to the old definitions in this new communitarian system. Capitalism is not your grandfather's capitalism. Communism is not your grandmother's communism, etc. So capitalism juxtaposed plus or in addition to, juxtaposed against communism produces communitarianism. The problem can be either or, communism or capitalism, however you view the world. And so there is an anticipated reaction. Problem, reaction, solution. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. It's not that hard
so they
to remember.
Create. Yeah, they do this in every way. They create the problem, and then there's reaction, and they come up with their solution. And this is their solution to capitalism at the moment, isn't it? It's the way that their solution, but actually it serves them, not the people. And that's what we have to remember. Now, it's interesting because this word, communitarianism, is not often used. They call it the third way. But actually, I think they call it, although people think the words New World Order is a conspiracy theory, George Bush used this, didn't he? He used the word New World Order, and that's what communitarianism stands for, because it's a word of getting everybody under this slavery. And so Bush was a big person in the United States that pushed this. Obviously, it's a Fabian ideology as well. So we had it also with David Cameron and Tony Blair in the 1990s, this pushing of this agenda. And they always called it the third way. They call it everything else but communitarianism. So if you could just, sort of elaborate on that. Well,
of course, H.G. Wells wrote a book with that same title, The New World Order.
Yeah.
Right about 1940. And 10 years in advance of 9/11, George H.W. Bush used it in a speech here in the States. And
he did.
So this whole idea of this conspiracy theory nonsense, let's put it this way. When you look at the definition for the word conspiracy. Well, conspiracies happen every day. Okay? Wherever you have two people bringing their voices together and they want to keep their voices private and out of the public domain, you now have a conspiracy by definition. So, I mean, this is these are nonsense words that I think the CIA dreamt up, this idea of conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theories are just normal in everyday life. Conspiracies happen all the time. We have Chatham House rules, for instance. In other words, what goes on behind closed doors, in, say, a corporate boardroom, stays behind closed doors. That's all that is Chatham House rules right there. That's conspiracy, not a theory. But anyway, forgive me, you were asking once again, then I...
Yeah. I was just going to say, obviously we've got people like Nikki Rapana and her daughter Nordica Friedrich, who, for me, I woke up to communitarianism when I wrote the anti-communitarian manifesto that they wrote. As you say, it was, they were working tirelessly from the early 2000s and even before on this, and they gave up everything in their lives to write this, to actually work, to write about this and to try and get it out. And I think they really did wake people up in America. And we'll be putting in the show notes the Anti-Communitarian Manifesto by Nikki Rapana and Nordica Friedrich, and honour their name, because when she passed away, I think I don't know whether people have just forgotten, but this is so important to understand how it works and how it's working at the moment to push the techno-slavery that we're encountering right now. So I think you describe it really well. Communitarian is tyranny with a smiley face, and I think that is the most brilliant way of describing it. And then you've got to link up with that, you've got an acronym which is GRIN. Can you explain GRIN? I can prompt you if you haven't got it there yourself, but I think it's genetics, robotics, all of that. Yeah,
information and nano. See, what's leading the charge, these uncharted waters into the future, our communitarian future, are the GRIN technologies. And GRIN is just an acronym for genetics, robotics, information, and nano. All of these are technologies. The idea of genetics actually grew out of eugenics. It's rebranded. So there's an entry at my website. It's called Eugenics and Eusociality. I'd invite the listeners to read that. Eugenics and Eusociality, and they'll understand how it is that they're going to foreclose this idea of independent thought and action with everybody. You will simply not have the wherewithal, the tools to even be independent in a communitarian world. This is all by design. This is why we have this international baccalaureate educational system, why everybody is specialized and compartmentalized. That's why institutions and large corporations operate as they do, as they were planned to do, because the left hand is not supposed to know what the right hand is doing. And there's another one entry at my website about medieval feudalism versus corporate feudalism. So it's all one and the same when you look at it, and you can see it with images going all back to the Middle Ages. But yes, the other thing to remember too is Nikki and her daughter wrote something called the Anti-Communitarian Manifesto in 2003. And then around about 2006, they wrote 2020, Our Common Destiny. In 2012, they revised both and include them in what's called the Definitive Anti-Communitarian Manifesto, which combines two books in one, 2020, Our Common Destiny, and the Definitive Anti-Communitarian Manifesto. The Anti-Communitarian Manifesto is divided in two parts. Number one is, what is the Hegelian dialectic? And this is very critical to read. I've read that at least 4 or 5 times. It's very well written. They put a lot, those ladies put a lot into that. We need to understand this way this thing called the Hegelian dialectic works. It doesn't just work externally. It's not merely an external phenomenon. It's an internal phenomenon as well. Okay, so it works on the individual and the group throughout. We also do well to visit an entry at my website. It's called The Art of Memetics. We need to understand why it is that meme theory and memetic engineering, aka warfare, is a principal concern of big media circles in the Department of Defense in the U.S. It's a principal concern of the people in the BBC, the intelligence services. And so this idea of the technology leading the charge into the future cannot be denied, because we have military-grade infrastructure that's been erected all around us. London has how many? The largest concentration of CCTV cameras of any place on Earth? Well, it's happening everywhere we turn, everywhere we go, every hamlet, every village. In Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, for goodness sake. In, South America and Africa, all over Asia, all over the Americas, both North and South. And if we deny that it exists, that we just consider that it's a nothing burger, because obviously nobody I know has ever heard of this word, and I know some smart people. I hear this all the time. I've been hearing it, listened to it for years. Well, I know some really bright people. They've got PhDs, and they are, high-powered attorneys, or, they've got a PhD in this and that. And I'm thinking, well, how piled high and deep do you have to go to realize that not everybody can be privy to everything that's going on and simultaneously all around them? This is especially true in the universities. But what they're doing today in these public schools, even the private schools, because Lynn Taylor will tell you they've got to teach the test, right?
Yeah.
So just the idea of getting rid of the Department of Education is only the beginning. We got to look at who controls all the textbooks publishing, like McGraw-Hill in the country. I'm sorry.
I mean, I did interview Lynn on this on UK column a few months ago, and she is a mine of information on data mining in schools, indoctrination in schools and universities, and looking at these schools, particularly primary schools as well, are becoming sort of like hubs, community hubs they call them, where they are literally, the indoctrination is coming in from external means as well, and it's all got a very fluffy, wonderful feel about it, community hubs, community schools and all of that sort of thing. But all the time it's being implemented, this technocratic infrastructure into schools to data mine the children and also divide them from their parents. I mean, that's what I get with SEL learning, social and emotional learning. People think it's being sold as a wonderful thing in the UK at the moment, and pulling the plug on that and actually really understanding what it means and bringing the truth out to what SEL learning means. And what it means is really they're data mining the children, selling it on to third parties, social services, whoever, and getting the children to talk about what's going on at home. What was going on in what do your mummy and daddy talk about? And it's even understanding the parents' politics. Everything is actually monitored and logged. And this is really worrying. And I think we have to understand what that is. And sorry to rant on a bit because it's your show. But really,
No.
the schools are adopting this communitarian way of operating, which is really, really concerning. And the indoctrination in universities, as we've seen with the ideologies of transgenderism and communitarian ideologies, and understanding that all of this is all part of the communitarian plan that's been going on for decades. I mean, this whole third way that Tony Blair was talking about in 1997 and before, in the 1990s, it's all now coming out into our schools. And it's all part of the Fabian agenda as well, isn't it? They were all Fabianists. And this is what the Fabians do. It's incremental. It's the tortoise that strikes back slowly. It's the wolf in sheep's clothing. And all the Fabianism is communitarian ideology. And could you speak a little bit, only a little bit, because I know that he's not the most important person in this whole story, but Amitai Etzioni, he started the ideology of communitarianism, and he launched it in sort of the 1960s, didn't he? He was he a political scientist at...
No,
he didn't start it.
Amitai Etzioni didn't start it. Okay, the thing about, see, there's other actors, okay, but few have been as well funded as Amitai Etzioni. He was born Werner Falk, Mr. Etzioni. This is a Hebrew name that, a lot of Jewish people change their names. We understand this, and he was one of them. His family emigrated to what was called the British Mandate of Palestine, I guess, in the 30s, right about the time the National Socialists began their rise in Germany, because they were beginning to push back against the Versailles Treaty that imposed all these onerous burdens on the people of Germany post World War I. And so a lot of those credits were not transferable. When he arrived with his family, they lived on a kibbutz, like many emigres to that part of the world who were Jewish, obviously. And so I think he attended like Jerusalem University, and I could be wrong there, but he came under the sway of a man named Martin Buber. And Buber is the spelling of his last name, Martin Buber. And so if you understand what Martin Buber was writing about, even just in a rudimentary way, then you understand who was the man that was shaped, known as Amitai Etzioni. So anyway, he emigrates to the United States in 1958. We find him at UC Berkeley. Then he moves on to the Ivy League. For a time, he is a sociologist. That's who this man is. He founded the Communitarian Network around 1990 or 91 at the George Washington University, which is right outside of Washington, D.C., the capital. And so he has been called a quote-unquote special policy advisor to every American president since Jimmy Carter. That would be the 70s, this man. But, recently we lost another man. His name is Alistair McIntyre. I've tried to alert people about his significance. Who is this man, Alistair McIntyre? Well, he was a Scotsman who was ensconced at Notre Dame University, which is a leading Catholic institute of higher learning here in the States, for many years. And he was a mentor of sorts to a man who is the leading communitarian thinker of Canada. His name is Charles Taylor from McGill University. But also he's had influence with people like Michael Sandel, Michael Walzer, Robert Putnam, people at Harvard and elsewhere. But he talked about the end of morality. Now ask yourself why a Catholic professor of some standing and tenure for many years would suggest that morality needed to be cast aside. And we can include that in your show notes if you wish, so that you can understand that there's been other people beyond Amitai Etzioni who have affected this thing that we see emerging and extent within society today, which is embraced all milieu, cultural, political, economic, you name it, and that is communitarianism.
That is amazing information, and yes, we will include that in the show notes because, you've got so much knowledge, and I really want to, help get this out as much as we can because we don't have a lot of time at the moment, and all of this is so key. And the end of morality is what we're seeing right now in every sphere. And it's so important to know that this is a manipulation and this is where it's come from and how we have to get back on track, how we have to reject it. Otherwise, all is lost because people are just literally going along with it, thinking, oh, it's cool to have this ideology and that ideology and transhumanism and whatever it might be. And we'll get onto transhumanism a bit later. But this is really, really important information. And, to also try and make people get people to understand the ideology of that they were pushing out was that your rights, your normal, natural, God-born rights are somehow sort of balanced between the rights of the collective, and that's what that we're seeing now is that individual rights are being run roughshod over. Property rights, all our rights are being run over and destroyed for the rights of the greater good, as they call it, which is the communitarian way of thinking. Am I right?
Well, I think that's fair to say in a simplistic way. Bottom line is that people that have a sense of moral outrage or they have a conscience, they're considered old hat and they're considered childlike. They obviously don't have they're not that well put together because that's just no longer cool to have a moral compass. Now, I don't believe anybody has to be a religionist to cotton to this idea of the golden rule. I mean, I know when something is immoral. I feel it in my bones, and I think the average person, doesn't matter their station or walk in life, they know too. If something is immoral, it's just immoral. And at some point, you have to ask yourself, well, where is the line that you will not cross in your own life? But more and more what we're seeing is people will, they want to be complacent. They want to be seen as good team players. They want to be seen as gregarious. And they don't want to buck the system. They don't want to be a source of a problem for anybody. So they'll go along with it. They turn a blind eye. It's not my responsibility. I've done nothing here. I'm above it all, above the fray, and I don't have to engage. Well, you know something? We all have to engage. And the best way anybody can engage is they've got to start with their own lives. They've got to ask themselves what's important. Why is it that independence is being bred right out of us? And why are all the smart people saying that morality is not a big deal? It's for the suckers.
Mm.
We have to understand that there is a conflation of things like values, traditions, ethics, and morals. We have to understand these are very different words. They have different definitions, different meanings, and the like. And I brought up this in the past too, but there's such a thing as interpretation of meaning. Well, what is that? Whatever do we mean by that? Well, that's like exegesis, eisegesis, heuristics, hermeneutics. That's like algorithm. That's like casuistry, pill pull. There's all kinds of words out there that roughly translate to interpretation of meaning. And this is, the average person is not going to be schooled in these things. They don't even understand really what language is. Language is really a system roughly divided between the studies of symbols and the study of signs, symbology, and semiotics or semiology. It's actually semiotics, but these are esoteric subjects for too many people. And that's why I suggest that at the end of the day, you have to become your own expert.
Absolutely. And there are people that will. I mean, it's almost like you could do a PhD on this subject. It's so vast. It's so vast. You could spend many, many years going into this in a very, very academic way. Most people don't have time. Most people don't have time in many ways. They don't have time in their lifestyles, but that we also don't have time in the whole timeline of the way this is going. And so what I think, if we can concentrate today on just the basics of understanding that it's everywhere around us. I mean, I've been looking at, obviously, my work has been on the United Nations and how they've adopted this and how it's been put into, for instance, through ICLEI, from global to local, this whole ideology. And they've used climate change as a big vector to bring it in, as well as then using legislation and a lot of kind of mind-bending stuff in universities to adopt all sorts of communitarian ideas, and to take morality out of the equation. And the whole climate change thing is very, very instrumental at the moment, in my view, of understanding how they're taking away property rights, because they're covering the land. They're using things like environmental and social governance contracts and biodiversity net gain contracts to literally bring everything into some sort of take the property away from the private sector into some kind of corporate superstate structure. So, and we're seeing our farms being destroyed. We're seeing so much, and I see all of this as the communitarian plan. So that they literally are taking this and implementing it at legislative level. These aren't real laws. A lot of it is soft law. And everybody's going along with it. It's like compliance. So a lot of it is done on how complicit we are to agreeing to all of this. And a lot of farmers wouldn't understand the complexities of all of this. Some of them do. Some of them are waking up. But property rights are key, aren't they, to keeping our individual rights. And I think that's what Rosa Koire used to talk about. Would you agree?
Well, yes. It's useful if we can boil things down to the essentials for people so that they can grasp this. First of all, the first book of that revised 2012 edition, 2 books in one, is titled 2020, Our Common Destiny. That's a snapshot of how it is Nikki and her daughter learned about the law and the changes in the law. You described soft law. That's also known as reflexive law. But I like to boil it down to this way. It's at my website. The entry is called Communitarianism, First Things First. And you basically have you have a 2-part agenda, okay? And then you have one thing that we stand to lose the most. That's easy to remember. The 2-part communitarian agenda, both globally and locally, wherever you are right now, today, is first of all depopulation, and secondly techno-slavery. And the thing that we all stand to lose the most is this whole notion of property. So keep this in mind. Property, what is property? Well, property is you, your mind, your body. Who has a higher claim of authority than you over your own mind and your own body? How about the fruit of your labors? How about the place you hang your hat up at night? How about your stuff? This is property. This is what we all stand to lose the most. And so, again, what is the overarching two-part agenda of this communitarian plan? Number one is depopulation, which, of course, is simply just a euphemism for total war. Anybody can look this up. Total war is unrestricted warfare. There's no rules. There is no morality. Okay? It's unrestricted warfare. It's just war theory does not apply here. Okay? Because the gloves are off. And the war is against you. It's upon you. So when you think about this kind of warfare, think about every type of warfare that you can conceive that is not necessarily having to do with bombs bursting in the air and bullets whizzing past your ears in the street. About psychological, asymmetric, chemical, nonlinear, mimetic, about lawfare. So many types of warfare. I list them off the top of my head right there at that entry, communitarianism, first things first. And then you realize that the people around you, let's call them your frenemies. They're your friends and your enemies at once and at the same time. Remember, Walt Kelly was famous as a cartoonist during World War II. And he had a cartoon character named Pogo. Pogo was seen wearing a doughboy's helmet from World War I, and he's peering out from a trench. Remember, World War I is all about trench and chemical warfare. Mm. And the caption reads, "We have met the enemy, and he is us." But what if the redux of that quote is, "We have met the frenemy, and he is us"? What I mean to say that in a communitarian system, you don't have to point your fingers at the fat cats, the oligarchs, and the Bill Gates, and the Faucis, and the Keir Starmers, and all these actors on the world stage that we're taught to hate. You only need to look at the pimply-faced kid that used to mow your grass.
Yeah.
Okay, that's now a grown man, and he works for the local police department. You're surrounded by unwitting dupes and useful idiots. And zombies who do not understand or know their own minds, and criminals who do not know that they are criminals at every turn. That means that you are fighting behind enemy lines. Mm-hmm. Imagine you're that pugilist, you're the boxer in the ring, and you're being pummeled and assaulted every day, all the time. You don't have time to come up for air. All you know how to do is put the gloves in front of your face and ward off the punches that seek to knock you out.
Yeah.
As long as we do not have the ability to fight back because we do not know who and or what is our enemy, then we can expect to lose at least half of our battles, according to Sun Tzu in The Art of War. It's only when we know ourselves and the enemy that we can expect to prevail in every battle and win this war. So I keep trying to tell people, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I'm nobody special. But, you know, you can affect change if you want, but you got to do it in your own life first. You have to realize that you have been socially conditioned, engineered, and brainwashed since the moment you hit the ground running. We all, people that are middle-aged in this world today, we all realize that we took a lot of wrong turns. And we didn't mean to be derelict in our duties and responsibilities, but we were. So we need to understand how easily we can be played. And we have to come to that realization right now and real fast.
Absolutely. And you know, you say that you're not you're not anybody special. You're not, you're not a big brain. You've got so much going on there. And this is why I really, really am honored to have you on here, because your work, along with Nikki's and Nordica's, you have been the people really putting the truth out about what this is all about. And I'm really, really excited about putting all this stuff in the show notes, and hopefully, I will be pushing this as much as I can, because this is so important. And I did actually, on the back of your things, I did do a sort of a PowerPoint presentation on this. And when I had my slide, I did use the tyranny with a smiley face. I'm sorry, I did. I thought, that's for me, that really, really kind of explains it so well. And if people can understand, and I put the what it really means is political correctness, techno-slavery, convergence theory, human computation, collaborative governance, collectivism, resource asset management, which we're seeing with all the impact investing that's going on. They are going to try and, well, they are controlling every resource on our planet. And this was all put into the global diversity assessment that I was calling out in 1990, that happened in 1993. So that came out of the Earth Summit, social contracts, snitching. We've got this snitch society, and it happened in COVID, where you've got people literally, the curtains, the lace curtains were twitching. If you went out too many times a day, they'd call the police and say, "Oh, my neighbour's just gone out and they shouldn't be going out." All of this will be a part of the society if they get their way. And the social credit systems as well. They want to bring in universal basic income so that everybody is the same. But then you are a slave to universal basic income. So this is really, really amazing stuff that you've put out, that people will recognize the buzzwords. They will recognize what is happening, because it is what's behind Agenda 2030 at the end of the day. And it was behind Agenda 21. So, and that's been my work certainly for the last 17 years. So this is really, really important information for people to understand. And thank you so much. Now, I'd like to look at, if we can, you said when we were talking a while ago about Buckminster Fuller, he had a most amazing quote that I thought, gosh, can we just listen to that quote from Buckminster Fuller?
Well, sure. And to paraphrase one of his most well-known quotes, remember, his papers today, I think, are housed at Stanford University in California. But, he was like Marshall McLuhan in his day. He was a public intellectual. Before our time, there was Isaiah Berlin in England. Major public intellectual. I quite admire Isaiah Berlin. And, but he said, to paraphrase again, you can't expect to change anything within the existing paradigm. What you can do is you can create your own model, okay? And when you do so, then you render the existing model or paradigm obsolete. When you can do that, that's how you affect change. And see, the way to do this is in your own life. You have to start. It's like, how can you know about loving anything or anyone unless you practice on yourself first? Mm-hmm. This is important to realize, but we have forgotten that. We have this devil may care attitude. We're careless. We don't look before we leap. We're all guilty of this. We never take the time to actually come to center, embrace the reality for what it is, and then devise a plan, a way to work this reality your way. You see, we never actually take adequate enough time to work things out for ourselves. And that's why I say, anything that you read of Nikki's or mine or other people, Rosa's, people that have written about these topics for years, and you know of them, you know of their work, maybe you haven't read it all, but you're connecting all these dots, that are going like this. They're colliding back and forth inside your brain. What you have to realize is that if you take these words and rework them and make them your words, the ones that resonate with you, your words are going to be much more powerful than mine or Nikki's or Rose's or anybody else's. I can promise you that. The most promising words or the most powerful words, I should say, are yours. So that's what it means to say you need to become your own expert. Because in reality, the only expert that counts is you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Forgive my little mini rant there, but
no, that's brilliant.
by the way, R. Buckminster Fuller also said, and this is what I challenge your listeners to look up.
Yeah.
It's a shorter quote, easier still to remember. And the quote is, "Dare to be naive." Now, just look that up. Dare to be naive, and look to see what other people have said and what R. Buckminster Fuller himself meant by those very few words, dare to be naive. But you know something? To this day, I still think he's right. We're not going to change anything in this existing paradigm. We don't have the power. We're being assaulted by all sides. The enemy has us surrounded everywhere we go. That's why you have to take what you learn from our conversation today, do some reading, but then decide that your words are more impactful and more powerful than anybody else's. You decide, and you're going to discover that there is a way out of this mess. But it starts with every individual. And as long as we are pointing our fingers at this person and that group as the source of all of our angst and all of our problems and all of our travails, kindly remember you have 3 fingers always pointing back at yourself. This is critical. Forgive my, a mini rant.
Absolutely right. And I think this is all part of the kind of the awakening consciousness of the entire human race is that I think at the moment we're tasked to be doing that, to be looking inwardly, because I'm seeing this in lots and lots of ways here, and what the outcome will be, I don't know. If humanity does wake up and be able to process all of this and see the right way and have their own inner moral compass and understand what is really being done to them, then I think humanity will survive. But if it doesn't, then we will go down the road of transhumanism and humanity will be lost. Humans will be lost to technology. So really, it is important. And I keep thinking, part of me thinks, I've been on this for such a long time, 17, 18 years. Do I really want to continue? I'm getting on it. I want to enjoy my life. But actually, I'm tasked to do this, and we all are, all of us who are spreading the truth. We're almost locked in. We cannot stop. And I think, and I do believe that this isn't the only, when you're dead, it's not the end. So I do feel that, humanity is at this tipping point. Either it goes down the road of complete annihilation or it goes down the road of transhumanism, and maybe there'll be a bifurcation of the two. I don't know. This is what Steiner spoke about, but who knows what is really going to happen. But all you have to be is convinced in your own mind what your moral compass is and what your truth is and who you are, who you really are. So I think we've got probably another 15 minutes. Could we just talk about, I hate the word solutions, because people always expect people like you and me and everybody else that is talking about this, come up with solutions. But in your mind, how do we deal with this? I mean, there is no one solution, and the solutions come within all of us individually. And maybe a solution will then grow out of that. So you explain to me what in your mind could be a way of dealing with the the predicament humanity's in right now. Yeah.
But I alluded briefly to this idea of coming to sender. This was a concept from the 60s. Obviously, I'm 71 years old, and so I have some memory of the 60s. But the opposite of coming to center, which is embracing reality and becoming grounded to it, was known as come to center.
Mm.
And it wasn't faith specific. Okay, it was part of the culture in the 60s. But the opposite of that was to embark on a self-destruct trip. Now, you'll recognize the 60s parlance there, but so if you haven't come to center, then you are possibly or quite likely embarking on a self-destruct trip. Now, I spell this out, what this means, in the very first entry at my website, titled 3 C's and a Few Words More. Once you go there, that entry, I suggest how to navigate the site, okay? Because you can read every word on it in an hour. The next entry is called Trust Your Gut, in which I suggest that, the size of your vocabulary is not necessarily what you should trust. Because there's such a thing as intuition and instinct, which has been hardwired into us as a species much longer than the development of language. Trust your gut. But then for remedies and solutions, I suggest the blueprint that I stylize as 9 words. The name of an entry called 9 words. And it's comprised of, these 9 words are 3 groupings of 3 words each. The first grouping is called the 3 C's for me, because the words are compliant, complacent, and complicit. And so once you understand what the definitions for these words are, then you realize that this tells you everything you need to know as to whether or not you are part of the problem or part of the solution. Now, this is important to grasp. Probably if you are in the system, you're part of the problem. And that's unfortunate, but it's true. Because what we see as the system today is obviously quite pervasive, and it's evident everywhere you turn. Okay, we are in a system. We're operating as individuals within this system, trying to get by, trying to conform, trying to make do, to navigate it to the best of our ability. But once you get past the first 3 C's, okay, then you get into the next grouping of 3 words, and you realize that, words like autarky, they sound like they mean one thing, or they are one thing, but they have 2 different spellings, and so they have 2 different meanings. You just hear the word as autarky or autarkism. And there's also that word counter-economics, which I interject at that point. This basically is all human action which is forbidden by the state, which is also peaceful. It doesn't harm anyone. All peaceful human action which is forbidden by the state, capital S state. And you can look these things up. And then finally, I get these 3 words, number 1, the law, and this thing called well-being or well-beingness. And then there is this idea of the economy, or econo-me. Now, why did I stylize these names this way? Because they're not in the dictionary. That means you can attach any label you want. It's like the cyberneticians post-World War II at the Macy conferences. Applied systems analysis. They attach their own name to something, and therefore they could define it however they wished. It's called The Coalescence of Cybernetics at my website. And bear in mind, you have the ability to connect dots, pattern recognition, situational awareness. You do not have to use my words or anybody else's words. You need to just come down, and that's why I developed this blueprint to demonstrate that anybody can do this. Okay, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or linguist or anything else. I myself am a former cook. I dropped out of college because I didn't want to be brainwashed. Now, I don't care if anybody wants to believe that or not, but I lived it. I was there. And I could tell you all kinds of fun stories because I'm an old man now, and I can tell you lots of stories. But you know what? The greatest stories that's never been told is yours.
Mm. Yeah, that's amazing, Lark. I mean, you are very profound, and this talk, this chat we're having is kind of just the beginning. I mean, all the stuff that will go in the show notes, hopefully people will look at, because it's a huge subject to get your head around, but the impact on the human race if we don't understand what's being done to us and where it's come from. I think, if people can recognize it, it is like the art of war. Recognize you can't fight your enemy unless you know who they are and what is being done to you. And the majority of people at the moment haven't a clue. And all we can do is push this forward. Now, I know you hate the idea of parallel systems, as we spoke about before. How do we make our escape from this? Do we just live our lives a different way, or live our lives as best we can without engaging with the technology? Because in my view, if all the technology went, life, I remember what it was like without this technology, and life was a heck of a lot better. And I'm sure you'll agree. But there is a place, I'm sure, for technology in the right hands, because we can't be like dinosaurs. We need to progress to a degree. And perhaps, the fact that it's in the wrong hands, how do we get our heads around that? And how do we get our heads around the fact that maybe AI and technology could be used for the good? I don't know. But do we throw everything out, or do we try and just call out? It's very difficult to call out whoever's in charge of all of this. Or do you think
like
it's
many
generally...
people, I would prefer not, because obviously this technology, especially the information tech, is it's quite addictive. It's pleasurable. It makes so many things much easier. Doing research is, having a library at your fingertips is wonderful. Being able to talk to you right now. We couldn't do this 40, 50 years ago, right? And so forth and so on. But there's another entry at my website. Its title is Magnetobiology and Organisms. We have to understand this military-grade infrastructure is not good. The tech bros ain't going to fix it. The people that own the telecommunications companies, they're not going to fix it. The hospitals and the doctors are not going to fix their marriage to big pharma. Okay, this was baked in the cake. These people are not going to perform. They're not going to reform themselves, and so that's why it's important to at least understand the scope and nature of the problem, so that you can begin to wind your way out of this puzzlement yourself, because you have this ability. It's innate within you. You have free will as part of your makeup. It's part of your endowment. You were born with this, okay? And you cannot allow all the smart people and the criminals and the zombies and the unwitting dupes and useful idiots that surround you to destroy your life. It's your life, after all. And so, again, the greatest story ever told has not been written because it's yours. And I guarantee you, I can take, I'm a fairly good editor of other people's words. To me, there's something heroic about everybody. Now, you look at a man, you can go on YouTube and just do a search for something, a dog's name, Skid Boot. One word, Skid, S-K-I-D. B as in boy, double O-T, Skid Boot, country reporter. This is the story of a man who basically shoes horses for a living. And he trains dogs. Now, I admire this man. He is so humble. He doesn't read books. He doesn't know much of anything. He knows horses and dogs. And people admire him for miles around because nobody knows how to shoe a horse like this man. And Skid Boot is the name of a dog that he trained to entertain the local children in the elementary schools, doing little tricks and the like. Well, he became so well known that he wound up on Oprah.
Oh, dear.
And so bear in mind, this to me is a heroic figure.
Yeah.
You know, the woman that just, I mean, she can cook like the Dickens. She cooks, and she's so prolific. And she is a homemaker. She is a stickler for form. She is loving. She has she maintains a beautiful home. Her life is like a kaleidoscope of beauty and sensibilities, awakenings every day. These are heroic people to me.
Yeah. No, you said
and we don't want these people to ever go away. We want them to be able to flourish in this world. Please forgive me. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I just, because you went from him and what he was doing to she. Are you talking about his wife? Who was she?
Could be.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm being, I'm just speaking rhetorically.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's really good because you're right. The simplicity, sometimes the real truth and the meaning of life comes from simplicity. And I think you're absolutely right. And we've gone away from that. We've gone into the technological, what they call the fourth industrial revolution, that they're creating around us, this military industrial complex that we are entering into blindly. And we're forgetting the seasons and how to do regenerative farming and how to do the simple, wonderful things in life that give it meaning. And you're absolutely right. Lark, I think we're going to have to wrap up soon. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. You are amazing, I have to say. I love what you write. I love what you say. And you have so much knowledge to give. And thank you so much for joining me today. Just briefly, where can we find you? I know you've got your website, which is, if you can just recite your website.
You can find me on the internet just by searching Lark in Texas. Lark is a familial name. It's a nickname from when I was a boy.
Yeah.
And but at tinyurl.com/Lark in Texas. And you can find me too as Lawrence Douglas Cumbie, Lawrence with a U, Cumbie. I don't really feed the Facebook beast anymore, but I did for a few years, and so you can visit some of my banterings there. But tinyurl.com/Lark in Texas, and I hope you'll put my email address in the show notes today if anybody wants to reach out, and I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants to talk to me.
Fantastic. And I'm sure a lot of people will want to talk to you. And we will put everything in the show notes, how we can get hold of you and all the documents, the documents from yourself, Nikki Rapana. I think 9 words really needs to go in the show notes and maybe, that's part of your website. But Everything will be in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I just can't, I can't thank you enough. Thanks so much, Lark.
Well, thank you, Sandi. Remember what a great lady you are. Always remember this.
Bless you. Thanks.